Good evening. Welcome to the October 2nd, 2018 Council Committee meeting. My name is Matt Zimmerman, Council President and a Council Member from Ward 1. I will be chairing this meeting tonight. Besides myself, the committee members here tonight are Jim Neighbor from Ward 1, Eric Jenkins from Ward 2, Michael Kemling is absent, Stephanie Meyer from Ward 3, Mickey Sandifer from Ward 4, and Lindsay Constance from Ward 4. Before we begin our agenda, I'd like to explain our procedures for public input. During the meeting, I will offer the opportunity for public input, and if you would like to speak to the committee at any of those times, please go to the podium. I will ask you to state your name and address for the record. Then you may offer your comments. So that members of the audience can hear your comments, I would ask that you speak directly into the microphone, and by policy, comments are limited to 5 minutes. After you are finished, please sign the form on the podium to ensure that we have an accurate record of your name and address. There are 3 items on the agenda tonight. The first item is to discuss council member vacancy for Ward 3. Ellis Rainey, our city attorney, will present information about filling the Ward 3 vacancy.
Sorry.
Quite all
We
right.
should never do things without Stephen Powell.
Welcome, Ellis.
And he is unable to be here, so I'm trying to cover for Stephen and get this information together at the last minute. And
So you're compromised right now.
I'm always compromised. But the process, I think, is fairly clear for us here, and she's finding the slideshow that Stephen prepared, and if there's any mistakes in it, it's Stephen's fault. So this very first one is what he intended to cover for you, the charter ordinance, policy statement, the special election information. And this one right here, this is the whole bowl of chili, all the jelly beans, the ice cream, and everything. This is our charter ordinance. As you see in line 3, the council may act to fill the vacancy. The council does not have to fill the vacancy. I want to make sure everyone's clear on that, and some people have already asked me a question. The next item that shows up on this is you fill the vacancy by appointment, obviously pursuant to Policy Statement 71, until the completion of a special election, and that's the second thing you need to decide. So if you guys want to go ahead, if you're making notes, go ahead and put 2 notes there. You need to decide whether to fill the vacancy tonight, and then you need to decide the special election. The special election can be a standalone, or as we have found out from the Secretary of State's office, it can be held in conjunction with the general election. And those dates are different, and I don't know if you guys have had any thought process about that. The time difference is basically about 5 months between the two. I have one bullet here that I want to give you in a minute that shows these 2 date comparisons for you. The special election as a standalone will take about 6 months to complete. 18 days plus 12 days for the general, plus we have to, those dates are from the deadline for the filing. So if you guys want to proceed down that route, then we coordinate this with the Secretary of State and, I'm sorry, the Johnson County Election Commissioner. And we'll have a more firm schedule. There's a schedule in here. This is the first item that you have to follow is PS 71, if you decide to do so. I said you have to follow it, and I just got done telling you you didn't. This is the procedure for advertising the vacancy. You have a special meeting. The applicants are required to come forth and provide the information there, the cover letter, declaration of intent, substantial interest. And this procedure, you guys just did this a couple months ago. You have this random draw for the candidate order. The candidates are interviewed. You write down the applicants you wish to nominate on a form, and the applicant, the city clerk and the mayor tally them, and the person with the most nominations gets to go first if that's any consolation. It may not be, but if there's a tie, you have a coin toss. If there's more than two that tie, in other words, if there's three or more, the order is determined by random draw from a hat. If the first nomination fails, you proceed down the order until you guys finally determine someone. And as you know, this has been kind of a long process in the past. This person is sworn in at the next council meeting. They do not have to go through any of the other processes, just an oath or affirmation at the next council meeting. This is what I was just discussing, the special election. This first part of this slide I want you to ignore because after talking with them most of the afternoon, it will take the 18 and 12 to complete the special election from the deadline because our charter ordinance provides if there's more than two candidates, there shall be a primary. If we give notice of an election, we need to know. We won't know, actually, if there's more than two candidates. And so if you proceed on a schedule without assuming there'll be a primary, you're going to have three people file, and then you're going to be really out of whack on whatever you publish notice on. So we have to follow that process. And that extends it out, and I've got a better outline here for you so you can judge that. In accordance with Charter Ordinance 45, primary is required if there's more than two candidates. We have about $50,000 budgeted for this. The election timelines on the next two slides are meant to provide a reference. Ignore the first of these. The election is coordinated, confirmed with Johnson County Election Office, so we have to work with them to schedule these. Vicki already has a note up here to not pay much attention to this because we're going to skip this special election process without a primary and move directly to this. And these would be your dates if we have a special election with a primary. And granted, there may be only two people filing. We won't need a primary. But if we're going to publish notice of the election again, we got to have it in there so we can include it in the notice. And as you can see here, these dates were estimated with the election staff. Stephen met with them several times and established these dates. November 5th would be the deadline. March 11 would be the primary, and June 3rd would be the general board of canvassers. And the way our council meetings run out in June, you would be putting this person into the appointed position on June 24. And as I indicated earlier, I spoke with the Secretary of State's office, and they will allow us to call a special election in conjunction with the fall general cycle. If that's the case, then June 3rd would be your filing deadline, August 6th would be the primary, November 5th would be the general. And I was afraid of that. The next slide's going to have the timing, but it's now a little different. The actual dates then that I put up there earlier for you would be, if you want to write them down, for special standalone, the general election would be June 3rd. For the fall schedule, it would be November 5th. So there's a difference of about 5 months. It carries through to the date of office, and the primary election, of course, would be backwards from that, March 11 and August 6. Filing deadlines would be November 5. So it's really about 5 months of a difference here. Your newly elected officials that are going through the general election process in 2019 by state law will take office on the first meeting in January, which would be January of 2020, which sounds impossible to believe. Those terms expired January of 2024. And so if you held this in conjunction with the general election, you would have an appointed person who would be elected, who would take office at that next council meeting. And you would have your other officials their term would not end until the 2nd January. And Stephen had some items here for you to consider that we should talk about. There's no appointment. If you decide to not do an appointment, well, he says reduced representation for up to 12 months. I think that ward has very adequate and capable representation. It would be one elected official instead of two. She doesn't get 2 votes because she's missing someone, so that ward would be, in some individuals' minds, at a disadvantage. The appointment in November special election, the appointed representation up to 12 months, due to the fact that we would have this extended period of time to get to the November election after you follow that fall schedule. The advantage would be that there would be no additional charge to conduct that election because it would be held in the fall. And the appointed and special election in March and June reduces that time to about, he says 4 to 6 months. We know exactly what it is. It would be the difference between June 24th and November 26th. Ward 3 residents, this would be kind of an anomaly this year. If we do this spring election, they would potentially go to a special election primary on March 11th and a general election on June 3rd, and then turn around and go to another fall election primary on August 6th and another one on November 5th. So they have 5 elections they would attend to elect their 2 representatives. And of course, there would be some additional cost in that. Oh, that's all he had.
All right. Ellis, thank you. Any comments or questions from the council regarding any of this? Jim?
Excuse me, academic question with the first thing. So if the election was June 3rd, what is the date for the filing date for the November election? Is that June 3rd also? 19th?
If for the regular representative election, it would be held in the
Correct.
fall. In the fall, that date is June 3rd.
Okay.
I frankly don't know how that ended up that way. It was, and these dates are tentative, we just sat down with the election
Understand,
staff.
but
and got this, so-
but the point, the fact that they coincide, and I believe the filing date is noon on June 3rd.
Yes, sir.
And
It's
this person would not
noon,
be.
June 1, which is
June 1, okay. So
Saturday.
the
That's right,
thing
June
is,
1, 2, 3.
this person wouldn't be potentially would not be elected until after the filing date, or take their seat.
If they follow the fall schedule,
Yes.
November 26th. You're right.
He's talking about special elections.
Well, they're all special, which is kind of confusing. It's been very confusing, actually, as we've gone through this. It would be a special election held in conjunction with the fall, or it would be a special standalone election in the spring.
No, I just, there's a conundrum with the timing just because, and that bears consideration.
And the other item that I don't see in here, but I understand if we move forward with the spring election, we need to get back with the election commissioner's office pretty quickly to firm down these dates. And that would, I don't know if we're going to fast track that, or are we just going to leave it on the second meeting in October? And if you decide to appoint someone, to go through the process of appointing someone under PS 71, we would probably need to fast track that to the next meeting so that Stephen can begin the process of scheduling that, providing the notice under PS 71, and letting everyone know we have an opening. Did I butcher any of that real badly? Okay.
Mr. Jenkins?
Yeah, I had a question, kind of just a clarification. One of them is just to clarify what we just talked about. If we were to do what we just talked about, having a spring election, that person would get elected, and by the time they would get elected, it would be too late for them to file for the November general election? Is that what I heard? So that's kind of a problem, because obviously if they run for this, they would think they'd be at least eligible to run for the city council position in the fall. But they wouldn't be elected yet, so.
Right.
Stephanie, can I put this up? Is that easy to talk
Oh, okay,
about?
yeah, that's right. Yeah, I do. Yeah, you're right. That kind of takes that away. Good. That was kind of worrying me when you talked about that earlier. I was kind
Well, I
of.
wouldn't thought it through.
There wouldn't be a need for them to file in the fall. If they run in the spring, they would be there for the remainder of
The
the.
following year,
yeah.
so that'd be,
Right.
wouldn't be a conflict. Okay, the other question was really just about the spring election. If we did a spring election, we've been talking about doing a spring election anyway. Am I correct in that? That's been discussed to have a spring election to hear an initiative on the Civic Center. And if we're doing a spring election anyway, that kind of takes away one of those issues. How about having they have to vote all these times? They're gonna be out voting for that, I would think. And so maybe we'd add one vote at that point, one more vote.
We actually ran into some problems with that. And granted, the election statutory provisions are not real clear because of all the transition we just went through to moving to fall. But the candidate election requirements in the notices were a lot different than they were for the special election for the community center question.
Okay,
And so we're having a real impossible time running those together. The other question we had was that I think the intent was, or the thought was, that we might do a mail ballot for the community center. And a mail ballot is, the statute specifically provides it cannot be used to elect a candidate to office. So
okay, so it doesn't look like we can piggyback anything on something we were already gonna do
it didn't
anyway.
work out. Yeah, it was, there's just different notice requirements, so we could.
And when
would
we
end
do,
up-
when we talk about special election, and we're talking about $50,000 approximate cost, is that including if there is a primary and the election itself?
I believe it was about, please understand these are estimates
I
that they were
understand.
working up for us based on prior, but I believe it was about 18,000 for each one, for the primary and for the general.
Okay, so that
because of-
was included. It wasn't two separate 50,000s. It was.
Correct.
It was a total of approximately.
Correct, that's what I understand. Is that what you understand? Vicki?
Thousands
Yeah.
in the budget.
Right, 50,000 is the budget, but I was just, if there was a primary, I wanted to know if that was gonna cost us an additional amount or whether that 50 did cover both, and it does. You say it does, so that answers the question. Thank you.
Yes. Stephen had some notes that were pretty specific on that, and so I saw that in the election commissioner stuff as well. The other item that Vicki prepared for us is if you decide to follow 71, this is kind of the timeline she had worked out for you guys to consider.
One of you guys are up, sorry.
Well, I'm glad I said Vicki prepared that. I'm sorry. But that's the first question you need to decide. But that, whether you're going to do this process, and then two, whether you're going to go to a fall general
Right.
cycle or a standalone.
All right.
That's me, yeah. Meyer.
Right.
This is less of a question, I think, and more of just kind of a general thought process that I'm having. I've been through the appointment process before, and I feel like it would be somewhat unfair to appoint someone and then immediately ask them to stand for election, just because I think there's a big kind of learning curve with what happens here. And I would want that person that comes in to sort of get a feel for the lay of the land and what the job looks like and whether it is something they're truly interested in and campaigning for. So I think I would come down on the side of doing an appointment, but then waiting and having that election fall with my cycle, so we don't have to spend the cost for another election, and that person gets a little bit of time to get their feet wet before we go into a campaign.
Good comments. Any other questions, Mr. Neighbor?
Yeah, I would echo Councilman Meyer's comments, also having been through the appointment process. It takes a while to get your feet wet and get involved with it. I think of paramount importance is that the 16,000 plus people in Ward 3 need the representation of two people or two council members. And to me, that is very important in this going forward. I don't think we want to leave that position open for an extended period of time. So therefore, I would support the appointment process.
Any other comments, questions? Ms. Constance?
My question was answered. Thank you on the timeline. And I also agree that Ward 3 needs full representation. I like the idea of an appointment process now and then rolling it into the November election.
All right. Any other comments from council?
Which November?
Any questions or comments from the public? All right. We have a couple things that we need to vote on here. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to accept a motion that we fill the vacancy immediately unless anybody here would vote to leave it vacant. I'm not hearing that. So all those in favor first I'll accept a motion that we fill the seat immediately.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion passes. Okay, subsequent to that, the choice here is that we move to have an immediate special election, everything we just talked about. That's a March 11th versus putting it in conjunction with the general election. So I'm going to ask for a motion first. Does anybody want to offer a motion that we have an immediate special election?
You're saying a
So this
special
is-
election, and they were just talking about
So again,
prolonging this off until November of 19.
correct. And if we don't have a motion to do that, then I'm going to ask for a motion to push it out till, to have it in
I would make
conjunction.
a motion that we have an election because it's not really it doesn't seem appropriate this body here is telling the people of Ward 3 who's going to represent them. There's one Ward 3 person here, and so maybe that one counts pretty good, but the rest of us telling the Ward 3 who their representative is going to be maybe isn't the most appropriate thing. I would like to see the person run for office and get elected and be a full standing member of the council. So I'd go for an earlier election process.
A standalone earlier election process. Okay, we have a motion to have an immediate special election process as opposed to having one in conjunction with the November election. Do I hear a second? All right. We do not have a second. I'm going to ask for a motion that we hold a special election in conjunction with the November general election of 2018.
19.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you. 2019.
So moved.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion passes. We have,
Sir, may I ask for some clarification then?
sure.
If you hold a special election in conjunction with the fall cycle, we have plenty of time, and that can go back to the next meeting as it would ordinarily. The vacancy process, if we're going to immediately fill it, were you going to fast track it to the meeting Monday night, or?
Yes, I was going to move forward on that, on filling that vacancy. Since we voted to fill it, that's next on the agenda.
Okay.
Okay. So we are going to appoint somebody to fill that immediately versus leaving that vacant. And then that position is going to be held until the November of 2019 election. So now I'm going to ask this next piece that I'm asking for a motion that we move this item forward to the October 8th, 2018 City Council meeting with a recommendation to advertise the Ward 3 vacancy beginning on October 10th with consideration of applicants at the special call of the council prior to the Tuesday, November 12th, 2018. You can call in. Following procedure set out in PS 71. That person would then serve from November 2018 until a newly elected Ward 3 can be sworn in November 2019 to fill the remainder of the vacant term. So I'm asking for a motion.
No, I think, are you talking about, Ellis, you put the projected schedule for special election primary, could you put the timeline that you had up there? Tonight's council meeting that says, and then city clerk does something, city,
This sounds like the potential appointment timeline. Is that what?
yes, that's
Yeah.
what I'm,
So October 8th, we would advertise the Ward 3 vacancy beginning on October 10th. So on the 8th.
well, it's being,
Yeah, that's just to advertise it.
so
Beginning
the
October-
13th is the magic day. November 13th.
Oh, I see the question. Okay.
Yep, thank you.
Is that date? I've got November 12th. Is it the 12th or the 13th? One says 12th. Tuesday, November. Steph's looking it up.
I'll look up November. November is
There we go. All right. So to repeat, City Council meeting October 8th is a recommendation to advertise the Ward 3 vacancy, and that advertisement begins October 10th with consideration of applicants at the special call of the council prior to the Tuesday, November 13th. And you'll be back by then. Okay? All that is in conjunction, or follows the procedure set forth in PS 71. And to clarify, that person would then serve from November 2018 until a newly elected Ward 3 can be sworn in November of 2019. And whoever that person is going to fill the remainder of that vacant term, which is 2 more years. So I'm asking for a motion to move forward with that.
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Okay?
Motion passes. Abstaining vote from Mr. Jenkins. The second part of this is actually a formality. Direct the city attorney to prepare a resolution for the October 8th, 2018 City Council meeting calling for a special election on November 5th, 2019 to fill the unexpired Ward 3 City Council seat. I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion passes. Nothing hard about that. Okay, second item, staff will review information previously discussed related to the selection of council president. All right, once again, City Attorney Ellis Rainey will review the information previously discussed related to selection of council president. And this item is a policy decision for the governing body. Ellis, it's all yours.
Once again, a bad idea to proceed without Stephen Powell, but we don't have any choice. These are the items he was going to cover. The chart ordinance policy statement. As you all know, pursuant to our chart ordinance, the position of council president fills in the absence of the mayor, absence or disability of the mayor, and that person will succeed to the office of mayor if there's a vacancy in that office. That election is currently held in January of each year, and the policy statement 7 establishes council president as the chair of the council committee. and provides for the election of a vice chair. The vice chair presides at the council committee meetings when the council president is unable to attend, and the vice chair is elected at the same regular meeting in January of each year. The elections are currently held on the first regular city council meeting in January. Someone makes a motion and there's a second, and this is the process you all hate. And I suspect the mayor does too, because she likely doesn't win no matter which one she calls on first. And that's what we're trying to change. So you guys have discussed two options: nomination with a ballot and nomination with a ranked ballot. With the ballot, we would have council members who are interested submit their name to the city clerk by 1 week prior to the meeting. At the meeting in January, council members would then select the person they want to nominate by use of this ballot system. The ballot would contain the names of the interested candidates, and each council member would check a box next to the name of the person they want to nominate. Of course, you have to sign it so we don't have a secret vote. City clerk and the mayor would tally the results and display them. The mayor would ask for a motion based on the person who was receiving of the most nomination to become council president. And then you would repeat the same process for vice chair. I did this earlier and I was doing it like that, trying to figure. In the event of a tie, the nomination would be decided by a coin toss. If there's more than two candidates who receive the same number of nominations, the order for a motion would be determined by a random draw from a hat. And I was just going to say, this is the exact same process you just identified for the selection of candidates for a vacancy per policy statement number 71. We would revise policy statement number 7 to account for this new process that you decide. And the sample ballot Stephen has already prepared for you to consider if you can see it. The next one is self-nomination with a ranked ballot. As I understand, this is the exact same process that you would have used before, except you would use a ranked ballot. And I understand this to mean that you would rank candidates in the order that you preferred them, and then the one who received the most would move on to the first nomination. The city clerk and mayor would tally the results. The person with the highest rank would become council president. And you would repeat the same process for the chair, and here's your proposed ballot. And then there was this discussion of amending Charter Ordinance 45, which all city attorneys are not real fond of, but we have to sometimes. This would change the date of the election of council president to June. The charter ordinance, as you know, requires a 2/3 vote of all members of the governing body, including the mayor, and there's a 60-day protest period. There's a 2 consecutive weekly publication period. And unfortunately, when we try and run these dates out, the 60 days followed by 2 more weeks for publication, a week to get the publication scheduled, a week to prepare the ordinance, and a week to adopt it, puts you beyond January. Just reading the calendar days. The other item up there is that even if you did move this date, you would still have to nominate and elect a council president. So you'd still have to figure out some way to go through the nomination process. And this was something that we decided that was something that you should consider, is that if you move it to June, you could actually have this unusual scenario where someone could be elected to council president and then not make it to the primary or the general. And we've had that scenario come up here in the recent past, except in this case, they wouldn't change in January when their term ended. It would go all the way around. So if this person didn't survive the primary or the general, they would no longer be in office after the first meeting in January. And so you would have to then go through this same process on the same date that you wanted to avoid doing it to begin with, which is January.
All right.
Then the other item to consider that Stephen was a little concerned about and wanted to bring to your attention was that if we move this to June, it's in the middle of the annual budget process. And those of you who have served as council president know better than I how significant that is or is not. We did find, I had a question on this ranking ballot thing. I didn't understand quite how that worked. And digging around in Stephen's files, we did find a little video that explained it, if you guys are interested in considering that further. I can't remember what city it was, but it helped me understand how that process might look.
In most elections, you only vote for one candidate for each office. But in some elections, voters can rank 3 or more candidates for each office. It's called ranked choice voting. Here's an example of how it works. All of the candidates will be listed on the ballot in 3 columns. Make your first choice vote in column 1 by filling in the oval of the candidate you'd most like to win. Vote for your second choice in column 2 and make your third choice in column 3. That's all there is to it. Now let's see how the votes are counted. Let's say there are 4 candidates running for mayor: Asha, Zach, Omar, and Lucy. Once the polls close, we count all the first choice votes first. To be elected mayor, a candidate needs more than half the votes. In this example, Asha has more than half of the votes, so she's declared the winner. However, if no candidate gets more than half the votes, we start eliminating candidates and counting the next choices of those who voted. In this example, Zach is the candidate with the smallest number of first choice votes, so he is cut. We use the second choice votes on Zach's ballots and count those voters' second choices instead. If one of the remaining candidates now has more than half of the total votes, that candidate is declared the winner. If not, the next lowest candidate, Lucy, is eliminated. Her votes are now counted for the next choice on the ballot. Some of Lucy's votes went to Zach, who was already eliminated, so those new votes for Zach instead count for those voters' third choice candidate. We are now down to 2 candidates, and Omar clearly has more than half of the votes. That makes him the winner. That's how ranked choice voting works. For more information on ranked choice voting, visit our website.
Something like that. No.
Did anyone else have the same question I did? Or
Was that making it clearer?
Yeah, I didn't listen to that whole clip. If I'm trying to get back to the presentation here, I believe what Stephen was suggesting was that we use this ranked vote, or that you guys have discussed in the past, that we use this ranked vote process to determine who gets first nomination, not to appoint the person. And
So I think Stephen also had mentioned that instead of going through, that's a rather protracted process. There's also a process that Stephen had mentioned that was simply tally up the scores. Your first choice gets, if there's 3 candidates, first choice gets 3 points, second gets 2, third gets 1. Add it all up, and whoever has the most points wins.
that's exactly what this slide shows.
Yeah.
Except this would be for the nomination, but you were correct, that could be used for the same process of appointing.
It's doing the same thing.
Same thing. I'm glad I don't have to decide.
Lindsay?
So would what you just described avoid the putting your hand in the air and saying
Yes.
somebody's name and that whole piece? It's just those who are interested declare it, and then folks rank choice vote?
That's the intent. In fact, I think both of these options provide for that.
Okay.
Whoever's interested in the position is going to self-nominate. Option 1, as Ellis pointed out, in option 1, all the council members are going to vote who their choice is. Those names are tallied up. Whoever has the most votes as a nomination then gets voted on by the council, generally speaking. And then if that doesn't pass, we go to the second, third, and so on. With the second option, with the ranked choice ballot, not like the one with the video, but just high score wins, it's a one-step process. people speak to who their choice is. Everybody ranks 1, 2, 3. If there's 4, then that's 4, and those scores get added up. Whoever has the most points gets the nomination for president, and everybody votes on that. The attempt there is to minimize the number of iterations that this gets.
And that should work better.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Any other comments, Mr. Jenkins?
Yes, I have some comments on the concept of moving it to June. The purpose wasn't really necessarily move it to June, but what the purpose was, that discussion is to elect somebody to council chairman, or council president, from, that has some experience, at least a little bit of experience having been on the council. If you think about the past, we got elected in April, and by the time you came up for council president, that's the 4th month. It was the 12th month. The person, you got an opportunity to observe the person a little as fellow council people, so you were able to make a little more of an informed decision. Yeah, I like this, the way this person handles themselves. I think they're really made up for the job. And when you put up on the slide, this person could be the mayor, because for all we know, the mayor could walk out and have a heart attack that night, and this person becomes the mayor, and they've been on the council for 3 weeks. And so I would like to see, I'm not hung up on the fact that it's being June. Maybe there should be like a 1-year time and grade. You served a year on the council, and that makes you eligible to become the council president or chair. And I think being the chair that way, at least everybody's had a chance to observe this person, whether it be me or anybody else, and say, yeah, I think I can go with it. Because you may be a brand new council person like Councilwoman Constance. She hasn't seen any of these other council people really yet, and she's going to be formulating her opinions on them and, her comfort level with how they react and how they respond and how they run meetings and all that kind of stuff. So it just seems to me it would be most appropriate. I don't know any job on the planet where you can get promoted with no time and grade. I mean, it just seems kind of silly in a way. And I don't think a year is asking too much. That's a pretty small amount of time for everybody to observe the person's behavior and so on, and say, yeah, I feel comfortable with this person, and you're not just voting in the dark. So that was the purpose. Now, if we wanted, instead of moving it to June, because that seems to cause issues with all kinds of other things, we just put a certain served 1 year prior to being eligible for nomination that would solve the problem there. You don't have to worry about months or anything, that kind of stuff. Because like I say, we did have 8 months to check the person out in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So even going to June was only 6 months.
Right.
So it was even less. But, some of the things that Ellis raised there made sense that, yeah, it could be issues with things. I don't know if it'd really be a budget issue particularly. I think we'd go through the process okay anyway, but there are some issues with it. And so that's why I'd be happy to withdraw that comment and say, I'd just like to see 1 year time served on the city council. And they're then automatically eligible to serve as the chair.
All right, so it's a minimum term before.
Yeah, just some kind of qualification requirement saying, yeah, I've been here for a year, and that's not a whole lot, but at least it's some time for everybody to get adjusted to that person before they become the chair. And this is not a slam against you. You've done a great job, man. So
thank you. I appreciate that.
But we don't know.
And after this year, it won't matter to me anyway.
Yeah, but what about
so.
the next guy? You don't know. You don't know what could happen down the road. There's a possibility that somebody's the chair, and holy cow, that didn't work out very well, and they're our chair.
Right.
And they're our mayor now because the mayor had to leave, and that's a pretty big deal.
So to repeat your comment, this is not about the timing, it's about the qualification of a 1 year minimum term.
It's
Correct.
just, it's having an opportunity to observe and make some kind of evaluation of the person you're voting for at that point.
Sure. Okay, so before we talk about how that nomination process is going to work, Eric, I think you want to make a motion that we include a provision of minimum.
Yeah, because that would be just an adjustment to policy 71, right? It would just be a modification to the policy. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Ellis?
PS7.
Yeah, PS7.
Yes, sir, that's how I would envision it. You wouldn't have to go to a charter.
Yeah. Okay.
The charter just simply says you will elect in January the council president. The policy statement is the other one that says the
Okay.
times. You're
Then
right.
I'd make a motion to amend the policy that would require that the person self-nominating themselves for the chair or even vice chair position would have a minimum of 1 year service on the council.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I would second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second to include a provision that anybody self-nominates is 1 year experience or more. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Oh,
Aye, that's fine. No, it's fine. I think this is, well, it would go to a council vote.
We are voting,
It has to go to council.
correct,
Yeah.
correct, correct.
It's a recommendation.
Recommendation.
You can change your mind and vote differently. even if
Yeah,
you wish to.
thank you for that clarification.
Was this process meant to, the 1 year, was this meant to apply to the council president and the vice chair?
Yes, I did say vice chair as well.
Okay.
All right, we're going to do that again because I think we had some confusion.
I was just going to make a quick comment before we voted.
Then go ahead.
Thank you. I would just agree with Councilmember Jenkins. And again, no slight to the very capable council president we have now, but I think it was, there was some trepidation. And I think there, as we talked about with the appointment process, there's a bit of a learning curve. And if you're coming on and starting in January, really that person, as you know, now goes straight into budget and running those conversations. So I think some level of comfort with how the process works prior to being in a leadership spot is a reasonable request. That's it.
And just for the record, no offense taken.
Good.
I completely agree. So again, the motion made is that we have minimum requirements of 1 year. We're going to move this to vote for council. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, nay. We have 2 nays and 1, 2, 3, 4. Ayed.
Okay.
Motion passes. All right, secondary to that is the process of the nomination and election. We have option 1, which is the self-nomination singular that Ellis spoke to earlier. Option 2 is the self-nomination with ranked ballot. So any questions or comments about either of those elements? Stephanie?
Yeah, thank you. I feel like I would favor the first one. I think it's pretty simple and straightforward, and really, it seems to me that the issue that we've always hit is this kind of awkward who gets a motion first. What is this going to be like? So I think the self-nomination process and having someone sort of go through the couple minutes, whatever it is, of why they think they're qualified. I think that gets to what, at least in my mind, the issue has been. And I feel like with a ranked ballot, maybe we're just making this overly complex for the sake of making it complex. I think we're perfectly capable of doing it with a simple ballot. So that's my opinion.
All right. Ms. Constance?
I prefer the second option with the ranked ballot. To me, it doesn't seem a whole lot more complicated than a regular ballot, and then it alleviates the concern of it's a tie and we have to do a coin toss. I feel like you might as well let people rank them, and you're going to still end up with the person that has the most choices, getting picked. So that would be my preference.
All right. Mr. Neighbor?
Yeah, I would agree with Councilman Meyer. I prefer option number 1. All we're talking about is this is about who gets to make the motion or the first nomination. This is not about the election. This is just about who gets to make the motion. Therefore, all of that other will fall out in the wash, so to speak, I perceive.
Mr. Jenkins?
I concur with Councilwoman Meyer and Councilman Neighbor. I think the self-nomination with the ballot is pretty clean, and it's pretty definitive, and it gets us to where we want to go in a orderly fashion. So I would support that.
All right. Any other comments? All right. I think the easiest way to do this, I'm going to start with the option 1, self-nomination. I'll accept a motion to proceed with the first option, self-nomination.
So move.
Second?
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Okay, motion passes. Okay, last item is community center update. In August, the council committee heard a presentation about the Shawnee Recreation Center master plan and feasibility study. In a proposed community center, staff will provide an update on progress and a schedule for moving forward. Tanya, Deputy Parks and Recreation Director, will make a short presentation. This item is for informational purposes only. Welcome, Tanya.
All right, welcome. Or thank you very much. Thanks for the time. Our goal is to keep everyone informed as things progress so that everyone is aware of what's going on and give feedback. So we are keeping everybody in the loop as we go along. I want to make sure, I'm sorry. Should have done that before I closed it. Okay. So the first little part here, we'll use this every month, hopefully, or as things change to kind of keep everybody up to date. Well, maybe not. Not. Stephanie, can you give me a slideshow? Okay. I'm going to do it this way. All right, so we're going to start with each time just kind of the history where we've been. We started in January, and we've really accomplished a lot this year. We've talked to a lot of people. We've got feedback from a lot of different stakeholders. Started all the way back in January when we hired Perkins and Will to process the master plan. March, we started bringing in the steering committees, different stakeholder groups that were interested in what this new community center could look like, getting their feedback. Our first open house was held back in March, and in April, the second open house, again, we did one in Western Shawnee, one here at Shawnee Mission Northwest. Park Board has been very involved throughout the entire process, giving their feedback, suggestions, and those kind of things. Also in April, we took part of the steering committee, which included Park Board members, and some staff to Denver, Colorado to do some facility tours to see what the process was, what are the community centers looking like. And so we brought back a lot of really good ideas. Doing the Build-A-Center that we did throughout this process, seeing it on paper, even seeing it in pictures, just really don't get quite the feel for it, but also talking to the operators and the people who run these facilities, it was a really good opportunity for us to understand what this community center may look like in the future. So in May, we continued on. This is when we introduced the ETC random survey that was mailed out to Shawnee residents. We had a great response, as you all know, from all of the different wards, getting feedback, ranking and prioritizing what they would like to see in these facilities. That helped us with the development and the programming of the facilities as we moved on, which was in June. We also started then with a market analysis and the feasibility components of that. If we build this facility with these different items, what's that look like and how can we operate it as we move forward? Can we build it? Can we operate it? So that's the operational audit and the organizational chart that we worked with. And then July, we worked through again that program of activities, what would fit in the facility, how would it fit on the site, the conceptual floor plans, those were presented, and then also the probable cost. So we came to you all in August. We had a really good work meeting, got feedback through that. Parks and Recreation Advisory Board presentation, got feedback from them. And then during our council committee presentation that was in early August. So fast forward 2 months. Time has absolutely flown in this whole thing. At that meeting, the direction given by this board was that with all of the presentations that were given is that we should pursue the base option with the 8-lane competitive pool, partnering discussions with USD 232 for that addition of a competitive pool component. The base does include recreational, leisure, warm water, body of water, but this partnership would be with USD 232 to add an additional 8 lanes. Continuing the relationship with the design team headed by Perkins and Will. It's been a very good relationship. We've developed a lot of feedback, working with each other and things like that, and we feel that continuing that process would keep us moving forward. Developing an RFQ for owner's representative to kind of help with the process as well. Everybody's very busy. There's lots of moving pieces to this project, and so wanting to make sure that we have really good direction moving forward on our side of that. Develop the RFQ for construction manager at risk. That was the construction method that we had received direction from at our last meeting. determine the guaranteed maximum price, and then the ballot question through a mail-in ballot. So that was the direction we were given in August. And so moving forward, we'd like to update you each month on how we're progressing with each of those guidelines. So the partnership discussion with USD 232 for the competitive pool edition, Superintendent Harwood is meeting with his board members, and they will be meeting October 22nd for a discussion on this process and what that can look like. So we're moving forward with that. There's been a lot of interest with that from the residents within those wards that go to USD 232 as well as others. So we're working right now on the contract with Perkins and Will to continue our relationship with them, working on the schedule requirements and those things that we'll see here in just a couple of slides. Owner's rep. So again, that owner's rep is someone to act on the behalf of the city to help coordinate meetings, coordinate processes, making sure that all of the angles are looked at, all of the options are looked at, and we're getting our best price options. They will work with the city, they'll work with the architect, the design team, they'll work with the construction manager. So this position is really important. We developed that RFQ for the owner's representative, and it was posted on Wednesday, September 19th. We will be receiving those proposals this Friday at noon. I believe right now we've had 6 different firms that have expressed interest in this, and so we are looking for those proposals to come in on Friday. We will review those. There is a selection committee, including city staff as well as a member from the USD 232 that will be reviewing those, shortlisting those, and we have interviews scheduled right now for October 11th. And we hope to bring to you our recommendation for the owner's representative to the October 22nd council meeting. In the same time frame that we're working on that, we've also worked on our construction manager as a constructor. We've called him a CMR or a CMC. That person, or that, by having this position in place early through the process, that will help us get to our guaranteed maximum price. That RFQ was posted today. So we will have a non-mandatory pre-bid meeting on October 18th at Town Hall at 2 p.m. And then those proposals are due back to the city on October 23rd with interviews on Halloween. Nothing spooky about that at all. So we'll be doing interviews again at Town Hall because we shall have about 200 little goblins at the Civic Center for a trunk or treat. So, but after the interviews on the 31st, negotiation and the fees that go with that, we hope to bring those to you for your approval on November 12th. So next couple of pieces that we're working on is determining that guaranteed maximum price. The purpose, of course, of all this work that we're putting together is that we can bring to you the best question that we can, knowing what all of the fees and possible scenarios that could go together based on the Johnson County election cycle. And if we do at the mail-in ballot, February 1st is our deadline. There's a 91-day advance notice for that election. So working with that, we've worked back to get all of our dates in place. Our design team and everyone is well aware of those dates, and we've got a pretty aggressive schedule, but I think with everyone on the same page, we will be moving forward with that. The anticipated election date would be May 21st, again, with a mail-in ballot that we talked about. So we plan on bringing that final wording, the ballot question wording with the guaranteed maximum price to the February 11th council meeting for your approval to meet all the deadlines for those things. So pretty clear here if you've got really good magnifying glasses, but this is the steps that we're working with. A lot of those things are happening simultaneously, so hopefully you can see the process as we're going through. The education piece, obviously once that ballot question is approved and we start moving forward, is going to be our biggest component at that point to make sure that everyone's questions are answered and understood, and moving forward then with that education all the way from the time the question is approved all the way through the funding vote on May 21st. Does anyone have any questions?
Mr. Jenkins.
Get my microphone. It looks like a pretty aggressive schedule and all, and everything's all mapped out. I'm just got a question about, okay, we've got all these RFPs, we've done all this stuff. Does that cost money? Because what if it isn't, what if the ballot initiative does not pass? Just, what if it doesn't? Then
Right.
Do we owe a bunch of people money for all this, for the work they've already performed?
Not for the RFQ position and things like that. When we do these, there is a line item in there if they choose to include that as part of their there's a phase one section and then there's a phase two. Phase one would be prior to the election. There are some expenses with that, with the design fees and things like that. So there will be some things ahead, but they're phased out. So those things, if the election fails, this is the amount that we would be expected to cover and then there would be a second phase two if it is approved to move forward with, and that would be through the bond.
Okay, that's what I was curious about. Would it be possible to get that number of about what phase one would obligate us to? Just,
That's what we will have once we get the RFQs and we will bring those to you. So once
Okay.
we get we select these firms and we have those numbers, we'll be bringing those to you
okay, great, thank you.
for your approval. On Monday, Monday, October 8th, Neil will be bringing our contract with Perkins Will for Phase 1 services to you for your approval.
Mr. Neighbor?
Yeah, I just, for what it's worth, when we were on vacation in late August, we went through the Commerce City facility, which Perkins Will and Chris Kostelik, he was there, met with us. We spent almost 3 hours while going through the facility. It is really an attractive facility. They were literally had only been open about a month. They were still learning a lot of things. They had different priorities. They had far more gymnastics than I think ours might potentially have. But I'm sure that Chris will bring some of their operating experience, because as we get into this, they'll have more like 6 months. But it was truly impressive facility, and even though they'd only been open a month, they were sort of somewhat overwhelmed by the response they had gotten from their city. The one thing I will say in there, the idea of the upstairs open workout area, it looks right out on Longs Peak in the Front Range. I don't think we're going to be able to do that down on Mill Creek, but
But we have Mill Creek. It's a lovely view
it's
too.
got a ways to go, dear. But it is fine, and Chris was very, very generous with his time and things, and it was a very, very nice facility.
When we were in there in April, they were still in the construction, obviously, but we were ready to just pick it up and bring it down
Would be
I-70.
good.
Any other questions for Tanya while we have her? Okay, thank you, Tanya. Very well done. All right, any other comments from council regarding the community center? Any comments from the public? Please step forward, state your name and address.
Ray Ehrlichman, 7510 Garnett Street. You have to pardon me, got a little bit of a problem here. I'll try and keep this as simple as I can and as short as I can. I'll start off with the fact that I'm not thrilled with this project. I don't think the city's in a position to be spending the kind of money that we're talking about. But let's look at a few things. Number one, this is from the information that's available online that was provided by the, I guess what you call the contractor, lack of a better expression. The black line is the primary service area, which is the city of Shawnee. You can tell that by the design. red line is the secondary service area, 5-mile radius. Ironically, part of Shawnee sits outside of that 5-mile radius. Kind of a little different. Number two, also with that same package online was this picture. Is there a way that I can bring this up larger? Okay. And there's a breakdown of the wards in Shawnee. Ward 3 is that reddish color, Ward 1 is that blue, Ward 2 is the green, and the yellow on the bottom is Ward 4. So I'm going to address the income levels of the various wards. They're shown on the first slide that I showed you. I tend to think that they're not wrong. They're not wrong. But they're not a true perspective, especially with regards to wards 1 and 4. Because if you drive through those two wards, it's obvious that there's a definite different lifestyle in both wards 1 and 4, west of 435, as opposed to east of 435. So even though we have the median incomes listed on that chart, they're not, in my opinion, accurate. They're real, but are they a true display of the situation? So let's bring up some other subjects here. Let's go out west. You'll have to pardon the resolution on this. Screenshots of Google Maps are not exactly the easiest to do. Right where my finger is, it's the Mill Creek Activity Center. That was a private fitness club at one time. That was taken over by Johnson County Parks and Rec after the outfit went belly up. I remember a former council member Vaught was very upset about that because it took the building off the tax rolls. Some of you may remember his comments about the county. But they've got a lot of things going on there. I brought some of their brochures and everything else. I'm not going to sit here and read everything from their brochures, but their fees are very, very reasonable, with particularly for use of the fitness part, the tracks, and what have you. But if you look at it, it's a hop, skip, and a jump from where this new community center is going to be going in. And yet the county is already providing a facility that has some of what that community center has. Not all of it, some of it. I will admit, that building doesn't have everything. They also have a lot of classes and pre-kindergarten stuff and everything else. So now what happens, if we go a little bit further up Woodland, and we come over here to the Mid-America West Sports Complex, and then there's the Mid-America Complex. And then we got the Olkin Fieldhouse, which is not too far the other way from where this new community center is going in.
Mr. Ehrlichman, you have about 30 more seconds.
Can I get a motion to continue time, or do I have to sit down and come back up for my second 5 minutes?
Move to continue time for 5 minutes.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Please proceed.
Thank you. Didn't want to sit down and get back.
That's fine, that's fine.
We have the Olkin Fieldhouse. They've got basketball courts, volleyball courts. People can also walk in there if they didn't want to go to the other one. So you've got these two county facilities real close to where you want to build this other facility. Now, how about our neighbors in Merriam? They jumped the gun on us. They approved the new community center. It's going in right where IKEA is, right across the street from IKEA. That's pretty close to that part of Shawnee that's outside that ring from the first map. Because that major line here, that's Neiman, so Schweitzer is about over here, which is the city limits. It takes in that whole area there. I'd question whether or not people in that side of town are actually going to drive 8-9 miles to go over to the new community center. If they want something, they'll go up the block to where the IKEA situation is. There's also talk about a special election, which would be for a mill levy increase, which would be, I believe, right, to raise the money to continue this project. Now, before we get into that, I will say, and I will not mention names, but it wasn't until last week that a member of this council did not even know about that Mill Creek Center, did not know about the Oaken Field House until I showed it to them on a map. They weren't even aware that it existed. I don't know if anybody else on the council is not aware that they exist. But if we're going to start talking mill levies and everything else, and if you really want to go forward with this, I really think we've got to make a boundary, a 435 boundary, and create a special taxing district west of 435. Because if the people on the west side of town want this project, let them have it and let them pay for it. But don't saddle the people all the way on the east side that have some of the lower income levels, more retired people, more fixed incomes. Don't saddle them with a higher mill levy to satisfy some of the folks on the west side of town. To me, that would be bordering almost on the criminal. Okay, and I didn't exceed my second 5 minutes, did I, sir?
No, you're good.
All right, thank you.
All right, any other comments from public? Yes, sir, please come forward, state your name and address.
Rod Hauk, 12807 West 7th Terrace. That is in Ward 4, the extreme eastern part of Ward 4. Ward to the north of me, Mr. Jenkins' ward, is just 5 steps beyond my mailbox, so we're right on the border. I felt I was getting behind on knowing what was going on about this community center. So last Saturday, I went digging for the audio of the August 7th meeting. And while I was cleaning the basement, I watched or listened to that audio. And I thought maybe I missed something, so today I sat down and I listened to that entire audio again. One of the things that I heard in the audio was the word amenities. I heard some discussion about we need this community center because we need amenities. 40 years ago, I came to this town with my wife and my 10-year-old son. We played tennis on the courts at Listowel Park. We've walked the trails numerous times at West Flanders Park. In fact, my wife and I will be there tomorrow. We've ridden the many bike trails. I've coached softball on the many baseball diamonds in Shawnee. And yes, Oakham Fieldhouse is a place where my wife and I go during the winter, early in the morning from 8 to 10. You can get in and you can walk the perimeter of that facility. And there's actually sometimes we're the only walkers. The other amenities that we've enjoyed are Shawnee Mission Park. If I was a Frisbee golfer, I could certainly play there. I could probably have unsuccessfully fished there. And of course, gone to Theater Park. My point is, Shawnee already has many amenities. In fact, that's why people are coming to town. Last spring, 3 houses within the block of mine went up for sale. They were all in quite good condition. The one right across the street was sold in less than 24 hours. And the other 2 went very quickly. So people are coming to town. As I listened to the presentations, and by the way, I do want to commend the park staff, Neil and Tanya, for all the hard work that's been done. And there's a lot of facts and figures, and it's very overwhelming to try and listen to it all. But one of the facts that came out was we're an outdoor recreation community. The quote was, "An outdoor recreation or an outdoor community, we enjoy our biking, our hiking, our walking, and various sports." So I questioned, why do we really need an indoor facility? And I went on thinking about taking my 10-year-old grandson to a large toy store and saying, okay, let's say I have all the money in the world in my pocket. What do you want out of this store? And I think that's what's happened with the work that's been done. There's been a lot of wants defined, but with a huge projected cost of 34-point-some million dollars. You know, if Caleb was taking, 10-year-old was taking me to the cash register, it would be a very big, big sum. And listening to the presentations or to the discussion afterwards, Mr. Jenkins, you expressed a concern about the discussions you've had with people in your ward. People who were worried about what an increase in mill levy was going to do to their taxes. I think some people here misinterpreted what you were saying. I think the people in your ward they probably want the community center, but they were concerned about, are they going to be able to keep their home because of the cost of taxes due to increase in mill levy? And I think that was grossly misunderstood. There were people who, on this committee, who said, oh, a $300,000 house, the amount of extra tax would be $16 a month. But scale that down to somebody who has a $150,000 house, be $8 a month. But the increase in mill levy may prevent that Ward 2 resident from buying a prescription or a pair of glasses they knew because of the taxes going up.
Mr. Houck, you have about 30 seconds.
Could I have a 2-minute extension, please?
Move to give 2 minutes.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Please proceed.
One writer in the Shawnee Dispatch mentioned that the community center is a luxury that we can't afford. Shawnee already has a lot of amenities. I caution you to be careful about how a levy increase is going to affect some citizens, such as those in Ward 2. For my grandson Caleb, I would have to tell him, no, I can't afford all those things in the toy stores. Grandma and I are living on a fixed income because we've been on Social Security payments for 10 years. And we're concerned, my wife and I are very concerned about what a mill levy increase is going to do to our own income and our own cost. We're living a very conservative lifestyle. We've eliminated 4 years ago our second car. 2.5 years ago, I went to a hybrid. It's now getting 35 to 37 miles per gallon. But we're not doing anything else frivolous, so we're very concerned. That's all I had.
All right, thank you, Mr. Houck. Any other comments from the public? Yes, please step forward, state your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Ben Terrell. I live at 10520 West 49th Place in Ward 1. There are a lot of things that we want, and once a program like this gets started, it's easy to get excited about the process itself and the deliverables that are available. The problem I have, and I'm one of the ones that got the random survey, and I'll just tell you how I answered it, which was your ideas are impoverishing me. I ran for city council in 2015, lost, and the point of my running was that the way things are financed around here by continuous tax increases is not a good idea. I'm an early retiree and I'm also on a fixed income, as the gentleman who spoke before me was. But even if I were not, I don't believe it's reasonable or responsible for a public body, citizen government, to continuously raise taxes because they like an idea. This city has certain unique things about it that it needs to put money aside for. And until it does that, it needs to take very seriously and very carefully the thought of paying for additional amenities. For example, in my neighborhood, the water mains break frequently. The sewer lines collapse frequently. We know that about our city. Lots of hills, lots of old infrastructure, but we don't have escrow accounts set up for those. Instead, we do annual budgets, but budgeting doesn't mean how much money you have in the bank. It doesn't mean how much you have laid up in reserves for costs you know you're going to incur. I would urge the council to seriously consider disbanding this whole idea of a civic center. I believe if my reading is right, the city has owned the property for years, but we have never put money aside for the structure or the operating budget necessary to run the structure. And that's also something to be considered. When you buy a house, it's not only can I afford it, can I afford to keep it up? So I don't have a problem if people want something. And I don't have a problem with the council wanting to give people what they want. What I have a problem with is the lack of adult thinking and being responsible for, well, okay, what is the whole panoply of our needs? And are we laying aside money in savings or some other way to deal with those needs in a responsible fashion, and then we'll deal with the wants and the amenities if we have that money. At one time in Mission, Sylvester Powell was the mayor over there. A lot of my neighbors used the Merriam Civic Center for swimming, recreation, their amenities over there. When he was the mayor over there, he did a drive to zero debt. And the city constantly saved money until a point where it could build that civic center. Why couldn't Shawnee do something like that? I think it could. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Terrell. Any other comments from public? All right, any other comments from council?
Yes.
Nikki?
You know, the reason that this civic center has come up, or community center has come up, is there's been a lot of response through a lot of surveys. And going door to door, there's been a lot of response on this. I believe the city belongs to the people. It doesn't belong to us up here. It belongs to the people. It's been a lot of response of people wanting a community center of this sort. They have to go to other cities to get this type of amenities that they're looking for, where they can use it year-round. I believe that the people should be the ones voting on it. We're not the ones raising the taxes and deciding this. It's the public. It's the people. And when people are coming up telling us that we should not give the people of this city the right to make that choice, I don't know how you can justify that, because the city belongs to the people. They should be the ones making this decision, not us. And that's what we're basically looking at. We're trying to give them what they might want. If they don't want it, they can vote it off and vote it out. That's not an issue. And then we're not going to do it. But we were giving them an option, and I can't sit up here and not give them an option since they've been asking for it. You know, it's not us raising the taxes or trying to raise the mill levy. It would be at a vote to the people. That's all I got.
Any other comments from council? All right, just a reminder for everybody, that is for information purposes only. Again, Tanya, thank you. Good presentation. A lot of effort was put into it, and it's appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that does conclude our agenda for the evening. I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes, and we are adjourned.